Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you very much. Hey, hi, Sam. Hi, Andy. How are you two
Good
doing?
afternoon. Good to be here. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes, hi everybody.
So, perfect. So, I think I'll just give a quick introduction to this panel and then we will proceed. I think we heard two great opening talks today. One with Pari talking about how digital is coming to the fore in most of the companies that we are talking to. And secondly, we heard Vijay talk about how there is this huge talent gap, especially in the digital space, and how there are newer areas and newer locations that are becoming more important for companies to look at when they look at transforming digitally. I think from an audience perspective, we could not have asked for better persons on this panel to talk to us about Eastern Europe and the operating challenges of setting up a center. How does one scale a center there? And not just scale, but as Pari mentioned, how do we build out hubs and innovation transformation zones in these areas? So Sam and Andy, I think between them, they have more than 30 years of experience of doing this specifically across the globe, and a lot of it in Eastern Europe. In my conversations with them, I've already learned a lot in just the couple of hours that I've spent with them. I'm sure the audience will really enjoy what we are going to discuss today. So first things first, I really want to start with one question, which is there one unique differentiating quality about the Eastern Europe region? We hear so many things, right? So there is this, and then there's LATAM, and there's so many of these things that we listen to. But in your mind, after doing it for so many years, Andy, you are the operations head of 20,000 employees, and 8,000 of them are in the Eastern Europe region. You're in a very unique position to help us with this practical question. Over to you, Andy.
Absolutely. So it's hard to pick one word, partially because the region itself is quite diverse between different countries in it. But if I have to pick one, I would say engagement. And what I mean by that is that a lot of these people are they have a point of view on what is the right thing to do, whether they develop for their own company or for a customer, like in our case, and they really want to do a good job. And it's combined at the same time with the pretty strong work ethic. So not only they have an opinion, but they also are able to listen to the client and ultimately work through the issues to get to the end result. So, as GlobalLogic, me personally, we work with engineers across the world, so I have the ability to compare. And maybe each individual of these qualities is not rare. In many other regions, people are hardworking or have creative ideas. I think it's when those two are combined, that is more characteristic of Eastern Europe.
Okay, very nice. Sam, you have had teams in multiple locations, including Eastern Europe, including in your 8-year stint as the IT head of Novartis. So you've done it at the customer side, and now as the SVP in Luxoft, which is now a multi-billion-dollar DXC firm. You are doing it for many of your other customers, looking at not just one location, multiple locations, multiple customers, different kind of things that you're trying to do, specifically in Eastern Europe. How would you describe the unique differentiating quality of Eastern Europe?
Well, I think Andy gave a great answer, I have to say, and I would subscribe to a lot of what he says there. And actually, I think that listening to Vijay in the previous presentation, I think the way he ended the presentation talking about communication skills, influencing skills, problem solving skills, and ownership skills, they are all characteristics that I strongly identify with a lot of the talent that I've worked with in that part of the world. And I think that it's probably the software engineering and the technical skills, that's a given. We don't operate in the space without those. And I think that the reputation of many of the academic institutions and the strong engineering DNA that runs through that part of the world. It's definitely a strength, but I really believe that it's a combination of that technical depth with the ability to own problems, to influence, to communicate in a very effective way, implementing what are often quite complex solutions in an increasingly business environment. It's the soft skills that really combine very strongly. And one other thing that also jumps out, and we see it increasingly, just from a time zone perspective and proximity to some of to many of certainly the large European enterprises that we work with, having that, like I said, the technical depth and the soft skills and close proximity from a location and a time zone perspective, they're real strong features that speak to the region.
Wow. Okay, great. Thank you, Sam. So we heard about, almost the hygiene factor of these software engineering skills, with soft skills being the cream per se. The second question, again, this is from your practical perspective. We have multiple customers looking to, either set up their own center of excellences or leverage partners there. At the same time, Eastern Europe is not one. There's so many different varieties. There are different countries, different cultures, and despite having spent time trying to understand and go there, it's not very easy to really get. And if I were to pick your brains, Sam, and if you can kind of deconstruct this for us, how do you describe, in maybe a simple way, how can you bucket some of these regions, right? So either based on the type of talent that is there or type of work you think is best done out of that location, or in terms of scale, how large can a particular team get to that location? So help us with that, Sam.
So it's a tough question to answer generally, because the depth. I mean, the scale of the size of the region, the number of countries that make up the region, and the size of the talent pools is extremely large. And I think many people who've not worked extensively with the region, and I talk about everything from Central Europe all the way across to the more eastern parts of Europe. It's a vast area with vast experience and vast talent pools to leverage. I would think for companies that are venturing out on it, I mean, obviously working with a partner that understands the real differences and the real niche areas of expertise in each of the different countries, and to some extent in each of the different cities, is very important. There's high level things that differentiate. I mean, obviously in Ukraine, everything is very centralized around Kiev because it's such a large city that dominates that country. Similar to some respect in Romania with Bucharest. Country like Poland, for example, it's obviously far more diversified and spread out in terms of talent pools and relatively large cities all over the country. And all of these things need to be considered based on the potential size of the engagement and the demands that are really needed. So I'd sort of steer away from making blanket statements. My guidance would be to narrow down on one or two, and rather than trying to take the best from across the whole region, which there may be huge advantages from separate cities across the region, but more to identify a smaller number to work with extensively at the start, and then scale from there. And that's something that we've had a lot of success within Luxoft over the years. And through that approach, been able to develop quite a deep talent pool and quite a large exposure across the entire region.
Interesting, Sam. Andy, I know you have a clear take on this one. So go ahead, Andy. How do you bucket these different types of talent pools, and how do you take advantage of the best in each of those locations?
Yeah, I agree with what Sam said. It's a very vast and diverse region, so it's hard. I wouldn't pigeonhole it to one or stereotype each country to one. But if you had to, I'd say if we go east to west, that starting from Russia, which is a very scalable talent pool, unfortunately, kind of tricky to work with it now due to geopolitical issues, but very strong on sort of core technical skills, kind of math, data science, algorithm development, data and cloud systems. So I described it kind of like that. Ukraine is similar in many ways, but I think was a bit stronger on a user interface and usability, user experience, making systems that not just perform very well, but also easier to use and consumer oriented. If we move over to Poland, I think there's a much stronger legacy there of working directly with European companies and having the captive units of multinationals. So because of that, they're very strong on what I'd say enterprise technology, business systems, workflow automation, so customer support systems. And the last one I would highlight as a scalable location is Romania. A lot of engineering is done there, typically smaller teams. I've seen a lot of embedded engineering done there, industries like automotive, for example. Again, it doesn't mean they can't do other things, but that's what I've seen as a distinctive feature.
Sure. So, Andy, again, sorry to push you on this one. So, what about scale? Is there a location where you can say that, hey, this is a place where you can almost expand up to 4 digits and get to thousands of people? And hey, like Sam said, maybe start small and then see how it goes. Your perspective on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And those were the places I've listed really that are scalable to that degree. So, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Romania, I would highlight that. Is we operate also in places like Slovakia or Croatia, and there's good niche skills. Like in Prague, for example, in Czech Republic, there are some really strong teams. But if you look for scale, I would focus on those countries. Now, the interesting part is that in a post-pandemic world, or pandemic still, but post-pandemic, people expect ability to form the teams more across location, a little bit more virtual, whether you do it within the country or within the region. So I'd say any of those 4 that I've listed, you go to a million plus city, and there is probably dozen in Russia. There's 5 in Ukraine. There is 6 or 7 in Poland, as Sam said. That's a more diversified country, and then a couple in Romania. In those kind of places, you can build a team. I'd say, typically people start with 50 people, 100 people within the first 6 months. We've done cases like you scaling up to 200-300 within 6 to 9 months. And can you get to 1,000 people plus within the first year? I'd say that could be a challenge in a particular single location, especially if you hunt for one skill set. It's not just the number of people. Right? Could you hire 1,000 people in a year and here? Absolutely. We do it every year, but they're not the same skill set. So if you say, I need let's say React, Node.js, 1,000 people in 6 months, you'll start scraping the market in terms of cost. If you grow more diversified, that's why I'd say go across locations, right? Mm-hmm. If you need one skill set quickly. If you build in a diversified center, you pick every million plus city, and I think 500 to 1,000 within the first year you can do.
Got it. Interesting. So what you're suggesting is almost a new paradigm of like a virtual center. It's not just one location, but different groups of people from different locations coming together in a virtual environment, which is what the pandemic seems to have enabled for all of us. That's a very interesting take, Andy. A little different from what Sam said, but that's what we really enjoy here. Different perspectives. The next question I have again is to do with a lot of the questions that our customers ask us. Again, outside of the usual textbook best practices to set up a center, Over and above that, what would be the top two nuances or like the challenges or best practices in setting up some of these centers in Eastern Europe? Andy, do you want to take a shot at that first and then we go to Sam?
Sure. I'd say in terms of distinctions, in terms of attracting the talent in that particular region, because all the infrastructure, the business side, it's going to be the same as in most other people in the world, and it's a very kind of Europeanized, Americanized kind of business environment in terms of logistics. I'd say attracting talent is the number one sort of challenge and objective. And what I'd say people are looking for in that region is the nature of work, the nature of project that they will do, both in terms of sort of the business side of the objective. Is it new product development that's consumer oriented, for example, that could be more attractive versus, let's say, maintenance and enhancements to a legacy system. People are less excited about that. And that often comes before the money, I would say. So that's the number one. So can you actually advertise? Sometimes people have this expectation that, oh, well, we're creating a job, so there should be people just happy to, and then we're paying well. So that's good enough. And I don't think it's good enough, especially if you're looking for that top talent with the edge. So advertising, and every project has something interesting about it. So if you're able to project that and attract people to the type of work, how that helps them learn something new, advance their career, have fun at work with what they do. That's number one. And then obviously high pay, it comes close second. I think people are less brand conscious or things like office environment. Everybody's pretty at par. Again, post-pandemic, who knows? Like I expect less focus on like office infrastructure, more focus on what is the nature of work and am I sort of compensated well enough. Those would be the two things.
Interesting. I think the kind of work that you get done out of the center, and going back to Pari's point of having a center which is higher up on the maturity curve, be it yourself or through a partner, is I think going to be important. Sam, you've been on both sides, right? You've been from a single customer setting up your own center, a single company, to a service provider looking at this across, right? So your take. And maybe this would be like our final question. It seems very short today, although we can go on too long. But your take on what are the top nuances from your perspective, and also do comment on the scale portion as well. And I think we'll kind of try and close there.
Sure. I mean, my answer will resonate a lot with what Andy said there. You know, there are two challenges, and honestly, the challenges are not specific to software engineers, and they're not specific to creating an internal center or an external center, and the solution is the same for both of them. And one, attracting the talent to the organization and to join the team. It's an important one. Brand and reputation in the market obviously counts for something. But for me, the number one is the type of work that you can give that those resources and individuals will have access to. And of course, people want to work on exciting projects. If you're a software engineer, you want to be working on the newest technologies. So you want to be focused on the advancing technologies versus the legacy technologies. And I think doing exciting work that makes a difference. And increasingly, the world that we live in, technology is becoming core in whatever industry you operate in, and the people involved in deploying that technology, they can resonate, they can see the end product, and they can associate with the value that brings to the market, even if it's for the client and not the supplier. So I think those things are very important in the attraction of the talent. But they're almost even more important in the retention of the talent. And of course, you talk a lot about setting stuff up, and Andy's right. I know hiring 100, 200, even 1,000 people in a relatively short period of time, we can do it. We've all done it, and we've got many examples. But it's another thing to retain those 1,000 guys or girls and keep the teams in place. And with that, it requires focus on skills, on motivation, on keeping people. Keeping people motivated to stay with the organization and keep delivering continuity to the clients. because the reality is, we all know, if we don't do it, there are plenty of other areas where they can get their employment. And I think it's that balance between, you know, getting the right message out into the market and attracting the right talent, and then motivating them to stay with you for all of the right reasons are the successful, you know, the successful ingredients to what we're trying to do here.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam, and thank you so much, Andy. I think we learned a lot in this really short duration of time in terms of how important it is. And I think the key takeaway for me is the fact that companies should not just look at Eastern Europe specifically and almost any location as just a place where you can get a few good engineers. But how can you look at them as key transformation hubs for your overall digital growth strategy, and invest in a location only if you have a very clear roadmap, or as Sam said, right, you can hire them, but would you be able to retain them? I think that's going to be a key thing that all of us should take away from this panel today. Emily, over to you, please.